we wanted to highlight biggest games to watch
Mhm.
this weekend. That's something that we've been doing for our listeners when we do this preview segment for NWSL Challenge Cup. And Lisa and I thought it would be a really good idea to maybe put the spotlight on the Central region for the biggest games this weekend, because when we're looking at how the divisions are starting to shake out as they enter this midway point, all the teams in the Central have had some kind of result. So you're talking 7 points all the way down to 3 points for the last place team. And Chicago Red Stars and Kansas City Current are level on points, but separated on goal differential. So we're going to be looking at the two games out of this Central region group. We're going to be looking at Racing Louisville versus Chicago Red Stars first. Racing Louisville going to host this one. And a little fun fact, Chicago Red Stars are still searching for a win against this franchise. Haven't picked one up yet against Racing Louisville.
I think that's so surprising to kind of highlight because of how well Chicago Red Stars have done and how many games they have put together where it's 2-0 or they're scoring multiple goals or getting shutouts, that up against a team like Racing Louisville, they just can't really get it done. And Racing Louisville throughout this Challenge Cup, they are a team right now that are sitting with 1 win, 2 draws, and 1 loss. They're a little inconsistent. They're a bit all over the place. They have a lot of different pieces that are trying to be put together under Kim Bjorkegren with Racing Louisville and this squad. Whereas on the other side, Chicago Red Stars, they're getting better and better each week. And we just saw a number of Red Stars play in this international window for the United States, specifically Mallory Pugh. Holy cow, this player is on fire right now. She is in great form. Now, can that translate from the international level to her club level back with Chicago Red Stars? But this has to be one of the biggest games that we have this weekend because Louisville are third in Group C and Chicago is first in Group C with 7 points for Chicago, 5 points for Racing Louisville. And because this Group C Central region is so tight in the standings, Chicago needs this win to stay on top. This is the second half of the Challenge Cup. This is a game that Chicago, they have to win. It's really a must win for them. And then from the other side, Racing Louisville, it's a must win for them too. A tie for Racing Louisville isn't going to cut it. Chicago could sneak out with a tie and still be in the top of the standings, but Racing Louisville, they need a win in this game.
Yeah.
Sandra, what stands out to you in this matchup specifically in the Central region?
You know, we're coming off of this international window, right? We're chatting about it. We've been covering it. Folks can, attest to that. They said, "Hey, we've been seeing you all week when it comes to attacking third episodes." And quite frankly, we're recording this in a certain timeline to these games that are going to be taking place, and it's a little bit earlier in the week for us in doing this preview, so we don't have the availability reports in terms of what teams are going to look like this week. And so some of this is going to be going off of some assumption and some prior experiences with internationals and NWSL in the past, where maybe there's a little bit of a break that might come into play. Like you mentioned, there's a number of players specifically on the Red Stars side that saw a lot of action during this international window. So Alyssa Nair got to start against Uzbekistan, and we saw Mallory Pugh get a start against Uzbekistan and then go pretty much a full half in the second match as well. In terms of managing minutes, how that's going to translate into this match, that remains to be seen. So there's a little bit of time there. We'll see if if they're going to be available, how that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Is it going to be, Alyssa Nair only getting the one start? Is she going to get the start in that? Maybe Mal Pugh is going to get some rest, or is it going to be both of them, or is it just going to be one of them or none of them? We'll see. These are things that head coach Chris Petroselli is going to probably talk about with his coaching staff and obviously his players to sort of gauge how that's going to work. But when you're looking at the Racing Louisville side of things, that's also going to come into play as well. Jalen Howell getting some minutes during this window, a player like Ebony Salmon, who was seeing some time with the England youth national team. So there's key players on the Racing Louisville side of things that also have to have those similar conversations. I hate to feel this way about it, but I feel like there's some makings here in this game for a draw. So in terms of the picks, I'm
Oh,
feeling like maybe this is going to be a draw, which is why I disagree a little bit that this is a must win for Chicago. I feel like it's more of a must win for Racing in terms of them wanting to keep pace, in terms of the games that they have left remaining in this Challenge Cup to try to steal the Central. They absolutely have to get a win in this one. And I think if Chicago walks away with the draw, and even a low scoring draw, like a 1-1, that's something that they could still look ahead and say, okay, we've got a couple games to try to get this done in terms of sweeping the group and trying to, go ahead and advance out of it. So I'm going to be going with a draw in this one. How about you?
okay, I like the draw that you have here. I see that. I see that happening. I'm not going with the draw, though. I also
Okay.
wanna touch on, how you mentioned minute restrictions. Mallory Pugh played in the double header, essentially, that Chicago had before the
Yeah.
international break. Mallory Pugh played most of those
Yeah.
games, the majority of those games. She played the majority of the time at the US, with the United States during this international break.
Mhm.
Is she tired? She doesn't look tired
No,
when
it
she's
doesn't look
playing,
it.
but this is the time with this Chicago game, this is a time that they could rest her. Honestly, if they don't rest her, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be surprised. I feel like that's Pew being like, "I wanna play, let me get out
Yeah.
there, let me score goals and do all these things." But that is a player that I'm almost hoping gets a little bit of rest. She needs some time off, a little bit of a break. Both Chicago and Louisville coming off wins. Chicago, the 2-0 win over Houston, and Louisville, the 3-0 win
Yeah.
over Kansas City. But I think that win for Louisville over Kansas City was a little bit of a fluke. In this one, I'm going to have Chicago taking it. I think that they're just a little bit more mature in their play and a little bit more consistent, that coming off of this break, they're a team that could actually develop. Whereas Racing Louisville, they still have a lot of pieces that are coming together. There's so many different things that could have been worked on over this break in the Challenge Cup, and I don't think one specific thing was really honed in on and being able to develop that. So I have Chicago taking the win in this match.
I like it. I like it. It's always music to my ears whenever you go
I
for health
know.
content. So we'll see. We'll see how the picks end up shaking out when we do our recap version of this. But we are still going to keep an eye on biggest games this weekend, and we're still going to stay in the Central region. We're going to be taking a dive now on KC Current versus Houston Dash. Both of these teams coming off of losses ahead of the international window. You mentioned already, Lisa, when we're talking about Racing Louisville, it was that they were coming off of a 3-0 win. Well, KC Current is coming off of the losing end of that type of match, where Houston Dash also coming off of the losing end ahead of the international break with a 2-0 loss to Chicago Red Stars. So these two teams are going head to head. Kansas City Current going to be the hosts in this one. When I'm looking at these two teams and I'm thinking about a pick, I'm gonna be leaning towards Kansas City Current. When you're mentioning, Lisa, you're saying, "Hey, I'm gonna put it out there." I feel like maybe there was a little bit of some flukiness in the win that came from Racing Louisville. I think maybe that can be said for the loss, for Kansas City experiencing that kind of loss in terms of not having the answers or getting off on the wrong foot in this one. And being the host, I think they're still looking to try to open their 2022 with a home a win in front of their fans and everything. So I think that they're going to be extra motivated by that, the type of loss that they suffered, and the fact that they want to try to get that win. Again, we are a little unclear of the status for Sam Mewis. She was supposed to be part of the international window with the United States women's national team, but was removed out of a precaution. She's been navigating a knee injury, and she's been on a minute restriction with
Mhm.
Kansas City Current. We have gotten to see a couple of matches where she played a first half for each game that she was a part of. So just kind of putting in a 45-minute shift. Maybe this was an international window that was a benefit to her, to sort of maybe have a little bit of rest and get some evaluation on that knee. And I think in the Houston Dash side of things, I think this team is still looking for answers, Lisa.
Yeah.
We're watching these performances from this Houston side, and you're leaving with a few more questions than actual answers. And I'm a little curious if, this is a Challenge Cup. This is like the thing that Houston is maybe the place where they thrive, and we're not seeing that from this
Mhm.
Houston Dash side in this third edition of the Challenge Cup. They're kind of flailing a little bit, and I would really like to see some type of performance that you can point at and say this is going to be Houston Dash soccer in 2022, because I don't think that we've gotten that yet. So when I'm looking at these two going head to head, I'm leaning more towards Kansas City with a win in this one. How about you?
Sandra, with you saying that Houston has so many questions unanswered, honestly, it's answering a lot of questions for me about what kind of team Houston is going to be in this Challenge Cup. After the first 4 matches, we were able to assess what Houston is bringing this year. And we weren't entirely sure, losing Christy Mewis in the midfield, bringing in Maria Sanchez. They have Brie Vasali in the midfield as well. What were they going to do with Sophie Schmidt? They had her in the center back position. Then James Clarkson moved Schmidt up to the midfield. I'm getting more answers every time we see Houston play, is that they don't have enough of the pieces there to be a top contender at this point in the Challenge Cup. Because of that, when you look at Jane Campbell in goal for Houston Dash, she has conceded 10 goals in this Challenge Cup, the second most, right in front of Angel City, who has conceded 11 with Didi Herrera in goal. And that's not necessarily a knock against the goalkeepers, but a knock against the team defending and their organization defensively. And yes, some goalkeeper mistakes that have happened, and not just ability to stop shots, but also play with your feet, bring the ball out and help Houston in their possession. And we haven't seen that from Jane Campbell. There's not a lot of confidence that's budding from this Houston team. And it's hard to gain confidence when you're 1-3 in the Challenge Cup and you've suffered some pretty tough losses, come from behind losses where you're up at halftime and you ultimately end up losing that match. So Houston just doesn't have a lot going for them. As we mentioned, coming off of a 2-0 loss to Chicago right before the international break. When we look at Kansas City, this is also a team that's had a little bit of inconsistencies. They've dealt with players that have had injuries, but we've also seen a lot of really positives. I think Haley Mace is a really big positive for this Kansas City side. She plays in the back line. She did concede an own goal in Kansas City's last match against Racing Louisville, but I think that was a fluke.
That was more just McDonald magic,
yes,
I
that was
think, than
way more.
anything else.
Yes, but when you look at the stats, though, like, that's something that stands out for
Yeah.
me, which is unfortunate. It's a little bit of a tarnish on her name that I don't think should be there, because she's had assists in this Challenge Cup. She's been very influential in scoring goals. And I think Kristen Hamilton for Kansas City has also done a tremendous job up front, taking on the ownership of, I'm going to score goals for this team and I'm going to work hard. Another fun fact about Kansas City, maybe it's not so fun for Kansas City fans though, they have the shortest average possession time in the Challenge Cup at just 15 seconds. So the name of the game for Kansas City is almost run and gun, throw the ball long, see who can get on the end of it, or set pieces, get corner kicks, and then get goals from there. This is going to be a battle. It's why it's one of the biggest matchups for our weekend, happening on Friday. You have Kansas City. I'm going to go Kansas City as well. I think that the Current is going to come out on top of this one. They're tied right now at 7 points with Chicago in the Central. And I think Kansas City is hungry to get another goal. And over Houston, they can do that. They can win.
All right. I like that. We got me as a draw in Chicago and Racing, you going with Chicago, and the both of us going with the Current against the Dash.